The last rays of sunset painted the Wyoming sky crimson, as Olivia Hayes clutched the doctor's words to her chest like a physical wound. Her hands trembled as she stepped out of the physician's office onto the dusty main street of Stockton, the brutal diagnosis echoing in her mind. 2 miscarriages in as many years, and now this her body would never carry a child again. The year was 1878, and at 26, Olivia found herself facing a future far different from the one she'd imagined. The cool October wind whipped at her skirts as she made her way toward the livery stable, tears blurring her vision. She told Samuel, her husband of 3 years, that she'd ride into town alone. Now she was grateful for that decision. "Miss Hayes." A deep voice broke through her thoughts. "Everything all right?" Olivia hastily wiped her eyes, turning to face Xavier Northrop, the town's newest resident. He'd arrived in Stockton 6 months ago, purchasing the struggling cattle ranch neighboring her and Samuel's homestead. Though they'd exchanged pleasantries on occasion, they were hardly more than acquaintances. "I'm fine, Mr. Northrop," she lied, forcing a smile. "Just have something in my eye." Xavier studied her face, his expression telling her he didn't believe her for a second. He stood nearly a head taller than Olivia, his broad shoulders squared beneath a work-worn shirt, hat tipped back to reveal eyes the color of whiskey. At 32, lines had begun to form at their corners, testament to years spent squinting against the harsh western sun. "Let me help you with your horse," he offered, nodding toward the livery. "That's not necessary," Olivia protested. "I insist." His tone was gentle but left no room for argument. They walked in silence, Xavier matching his long strides to her shorter ones. When they reached the stable, he exchanged a few words with the liveryman before leading out Olivia's mare, already saddled. "Thank you," she said softly, reaching for the reins. Xavier hesitated before handing them over. "It's going to be dark soon. The trail to your place ain't exactly safe after nightfall. I know the way." "I've no doubt of that," he said, "but I'd feel better if you'd allow me to ride with you." Any other day, Olivia might have argued. Today, the thought of riding alone with her devastating news for company was unbearable. "All right," she conceded. 20 minutes later, they were riding side by side along the trail that wound through rolling hills dotted with sagebrush and pine. The sky had deepened to indigo, the first stars appearing overhead. Xavier hadn't pressed her to talk, for which Olivia was grateful. "Samuel's away," she said suddenly. "Took a herd to Cheyenne. Won't be back for another week." Xavier nodded. "That why you came to town alone?" "Partly," Olivia admitted. "I also had an appointment with Dr. Miller." Xavier remained silent, waiting for her to continue if she chose. "He says I can't have children." The words fell from her lips like stones, each one painful to release. "2 miscarriages damaged something inside me. If I try again, I could die." She hadn't meant to tell him a virtual stranger, but there was something about Xavier Northrop that invited confidence. "I'm sorry," he said simply, his voice low and sincere. Olivia swallowed hard. "Samuel wants children. Needs them, really, to help with the ranch as they grow. What kind of wife can't give her husband children?" "A living one," Xavier replied firmly. "Better a wife with no children than no wife at all." They rode in silence for several moments before Xavier spoke again. "My wife died in childbirth," he said, so quietly Olivia almost didn't hear him. "Her and our baby girl. That's why I came west, couldn't stand being in our home in Missouri anymore." Olivia's heart constricted at his confession. "I'm sorry for your loss, Mr. Northrop." "Xavier," he corrected gently. "Figure if we're sharing such personal matters, we might as well use first names." "Xavier," she repeated, offering a small smile. "I'm Olivia." They crested a hill, and the lights of the Hayes homestead came into view in the valley below. Olivia felt a knot form in her stomach at the sight. The house she and Samuel had built together, planning for a future that would never come. "Will you be all right?" Xavier asked as they approached the house. "Alone, I mean." "I've managed alone before," Olivia said with more confidence than she felt. "Samuel's business takes him away often enough." Xavier dismounted and helped her down from her mare. His hands were strong and calloused as they briefly gripped her waist. "If you need anything," he said, "anything at all, my place is just over that ridge. Won't take me more than 15 minutes to get here." Olivia nodded, touched by his concern. "Thank you for the escort, Xavier." "My pleasure, Olivia." He tipped his hat before mounting his stallion. "Try to get some rest." As she watched him ride away, Olivia wondered how she would tell Samuel her news. Would he look at her differently? Would he regret marrying her? The questions circled her mind like hungry wolves as she led her horse to the barn. The next morning, Olivia was startled from sleep by a knock at the door. Sunlight streamed through the curtains, indicating she'd slept far later than usual. Hastily donning a robe over her nightgown, she hurried to answer. Xavier Northrop stood on her porch, hat in hand. "Morning," he said. "Hope I'm not disturbing you." "Not at all," Olivia replied, self-consciously tucking a loose strand of honey-brown hair behind her ear. "I overslept, it seems." "Figured you might not feel up to chores today," he explained. "Already fed your livestock and gathered the eggs." Olivia blinked in surprise. "You did?" Xavier shrugged. "Wasn't much trouble, I was up at dawn anyway." "That's very kind of you, but unnecessary," Olivia said, though she was touched by the gesture. "I'm perfectly capable, never said you weren't," Xavier interrupted gently. "Just thought you might appreciate a day to adjust to things." His consideration brought unexpected tears to Olivia's eyes. She turned away, not wanting him to see her emotional state. "Would you like some coffee?" she asked, desperate to change the subject. "Least I can do to thank you." Xavier hesitated. "Don't want to impose." "It's no imposition," Olivia assured him. "Please come in." As Xavier stepped inside, Olivia became acutely aware of her state of undress. "Let me change quickly," she said, feeling heat rise to her cheeks. "Make yourself comfortable." In her bedroom, Olivia dressed hurriedly in a simple blue calico dress, pinning her hair in a loose bun. When she returned to the kitchen, Xavier was standing awkwardly by the table, examining a wooden carving of a horse that Samuel had made during their first year of marriage. "Samuel made that," she explained, moving to the stove. "He's quite talented with his hands." Xavier set the carving down carefully. "It's fine work." As Olivia prepared the coffee, an uncomfortable silence settled between them. She was acutely aware of Xavier's presence, a man other than her husband, in her home while she was alone. Though nothing improper was occurring, she knew how such things could appear to others. "I should be more careful," she said suddenly, setting a steaming cup before him. "People talk in Stockton." Xavier's expression darkened. "Let them talk, you've done nothing wrong." "Neither of us has," Olivia agreed, "but perception often matters more than truth in small towns." He nodded reluctantly. "Fair point. Still, couldn't leave you alone after yesterday." They sipped their coffee, the silence growing more comfortable. "How long have you and Samuel been married?" Xavier asked. 3 years this past June," Olivia replied. "We met in Denver. I was teaching at a school there and he was delivering cattle. He convinced me that life on a homestead would be an adventure." She smiled at the memory. "He wasn't wrong." "You love him," Xavier observed. "I do," Olivia said without hesitation. "Very much." Xavier's face remained impassive. "Then he's a lucky man, regardless of whether you can give him children." "I hope he sees it that way," Olivia murmured. Xavier finished his coffee and stood. "I should go, got my own place to tend to." At the door, he turned back to her. I meant what I said yesterday, if you need anything. Thank you, Olivia said sincerely, for everything. After Xavier left, Olivia found herself restless. To occupy her mind, she threw herself into housework, scrubbing floors and washing linens with a fervor that left her physically exhausted but mentally alert. As evening approached, she sat on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink. The sound of approaching hoofbeats drew her attention. For a moment, her heart leapt thinking it might be Samuel returning early, but instead she saw Xavier riding toward the house, leading a second horse laden with supplies. "Xavier," she called as he drew near. "Is something wrong?" "Nothing's wrong," he assured her, dismounting. "Brought some supplies from town. Thought you might need them." Olivia frowned. "I don't recall asking for supplies." "You didn't," Xavier acknowledged. "But I figured with Samuel away you might be running low on certain things." He began unloading parcels: flour, coffee, sugar, salt pork, and even a small package wrapped in brown paper that he handed to her with an almost shy expression. "What's this?" Olivia asked, unwrapping it to find a small book of poetry. "Noticed you reading poetry on your porch a few times when I rode past," Xavier explained. "Thought it might help take your mind off things." Touched beyond words, Olivia ran her fingers over the embossed cover. "This is incredibly thoughtful, Xavier, but I can't accept all this." "Sure you can," he insisted. "Consider it neighborly." "At least let me pay you back when Samuel returns," Olivia said. Xavier shook his head. "That's not necessary." As they carried the supplies inside, Olivia found herself studying Xavier when he wasn't looking. Despite his rugged appearance, there was a gentleness to him that she hadn't expected. His kindness toward her seemed to come from a place of genuine concern rather than obligation. "Will you stay for supper?" she asked impulsively. "I was just about to prepare something, and there's plenty for two." Xavier hesitated. "People talk in Stockton," he reminded her, echoing her earlier words. Olivia smiled. "Let them talk. I'm simply thanking a neighbor for his kindness." Over a simple meal of beans, cornbread, and the salt pork Xavier had brought, they talked easily about inconsequential things: the weather, the cattle market, local gossip. Olivia found herself laughing for the first time since receiving her devastating news. As Xavier prepared to leave, he paused at the door. "You'll be all right." "I will," Olivia assured him, surprised to find she meant it. "Thank you for the company. It helped more than you know." The days fell into a pattern. Each morning, Xavier would ride over to check on Olivia, often bringing small gifts: fresh vegetables from his garden, a jar of honey from a beekeeper in town, wildflowers he'd gathered along the way. They were innocent gestures, yet Olivia found herself looking forward to his visits with increasing anticipation. They were careful to maintain propriety, always meeting outdoors or with the door open, never staying past sunset. Still, Olivia couldn't help but worry about how their growing friendship might appear to others. On the fifth day, as they sat on the porch drinking lemonade, Olivia voiced her concerns. "People will talk if they see you visiting every day." Xavier considered her words. "Does that bother you?" "It should," Olivia admitted, "but I find I care less than I probably ought to." "Samuel returns tomorrow," Olivia nodded, a knot forming in her stomach. "Yes, the cattle sale should be concluded by now." Xavier studied her face. "You're worried about telling him. Wouldn't you be?" Olivia sighed. "I promised him a family when we married. Now I have to tell him that's impossible." "If he loves you," Xavier said quietly, "it won't matter." Olivia wished she could believe that, but doubt gnawed at her. Samuel had always spoken of having sons to help with the ranch, daughters to brighten their home. What if her inability to provide those children changed how he felt about her? "Will you come by tomorrow?" she asked. After Samuel returns, Xavier shook his head. That should be private between you two, but I'll be thinking of you. The next day dawned clear and bright. Olivia spent the morning cleaning the house from top to bottom, then preparing Samuel's favorite meal, beef stew with dumplings. By mid-afternoon, she was watching the road anxiously, her stomach churning with dread. When she finally heard the sound of approaching hoofbeats, Olivia smoothed her dress and took a deep breath. Samuel appeared on the ridge, his familiar silhouette bringing both joy and apprehension. "Livy," he called as he dismounted, striding toward her with open arms. Olivia allowed herself to be swept up in his embrace, breathing in the scent of him leather, tobacco, and the dust of the trail. At 35, Samuel Hayes remained a handsome man, with dark hair now streaked with silver at the temples and deep blue eyes that crinkled when he smiled. "I've missed you," she said truthfully, despite the fear clutching at her heart. Samuel kissed her soundly. "Missed you more, I'd wager." "The trip was successful, got top dollar for the herd. We'll be comfortable this winter." Over supper, Samuel talked enthusiastically about his journey, the people he'd met, the deals he'd made. Olivia listened, nodding in all the right places, but her mind was elsewhere, rehearsing how to tell him her news. "You're quiet tonight," Samuel observed as they finished their meal. "Something on your mind?" Olivia's hands trembled as she set down her fork. "Samuel, there's something I need to tell you." "That sounds serious," he said, his smile fading. "What is it, Livy? While you were away, I saw Dr. Miller." Olivia forced herself to meet her husband's gaze. "About why I've been losing our babies." Samuel reached across the table to take her hand. "What did he say?" he said. Olivia's voice broke, and she had to start again. "He said I can't carry a child again. The miscarriages damaged something inside me. If I try to have another baby, I could die." The silence that followed seemed to stretch for an eternity. Samuel's face went through a series of emotions: shock, disbelief, sorrow. "Are you certain?" he finally asked, his voice hoarse. Olivia nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I'm so sorry, Samuel. I know how much you wanted children." Samuel rose from his chair and came to kneel beside her. "Livy, look at me." When she did, the love in his eyes nearly undid her. "I wanted children, yes," he said softly, "but I want you more. If the choice is between having you without children or losing you trying to have them, it's no choice at all." Relief washed over Olivia like a wave. "But the ranch, we'll manage," Samuel assured her. "We can hire help as we get older, or maybe someday we'll adopt. There are plenty of orphans who need good homes." He pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly as she wept against his shoulder. "I love you, Olivia Hayes. That's not going to change because of this." That night, as they lay together in the darkness, Samuel's arms around her, Olivia felt a peace she hadn't expected. There would be difficult times ahead, she knew, but they would face them together. The next morning, Samuel rose early to tend to the livestock. When he returned to the house, he wore an odd expression. "Livy," he said, "did we have visitors while I was gone?" Olivia's heart skipped a beat. "Xavier Northrop stopped by a few times to check on me." "Why, the barn's been mucked out recently," Samuel observed. "And someone's repaired that loose board on the chicken coop." "Xavier was kind enough to help with some chores," Olivia explained, careful to keep her voice even. "After I received the news from Dr. Miller, I was not myself for a day or two." Samuel's expression was unreadable. "That was neighborly of him." "It was," Olivia agreed. "He's a good man. His wife died in childbirth, did you know? That's why he moved west." Something in Samuel's face softened. "No, I didn't know that." Later that morning, as Olivia was hanging laundry, she saw Samuel ride toward Xavier's ranch. She watched anxiously, wondering what her husband intended to say to the man who had been her support during his absence. Samuel returned an hour later. "Invited Xavier to Sunday dinner," he announced casually. Olivia nearly dropped the sheet she was pinning to the line. "You did? Seems I owe him thanks for looking after my wife," Samuel said. "Besides, man shouldn't eat alone all the time, not good for the spirit." Olivia studied her husband's face for any sign of suspicion or jealousy, but found none. "That's very generous of you," she said carefully. Samuel smiled. "Man's a widower who showed kindness to my wife when she needed it. Least I can do is offer him a decent meal." Sunday arrived clear and mild. Olivia spent the morning preparing a roast chicken with all the trimmings, feeling oddly nervous about Xavier's visit. When he arrived promptly at noon, she was struck by the change in his appearance. Gone was the work-worn cowboy. In his place stood a gentleman in a clean black suit, his usually unruly hair slicked back, face freshly shaved. "Mrs. Hayes," he said formally, handing her a small bouquet of wildflowers. "Thank you for the invitation." "It was Samuel's idea," Olivia replied, accepting the flowers. "And please, it's still Olivia." Dinner was initially awkward, with conversation limited to safe topics like cattle prices and weather predictions. Gradually, however, the atmosphere relaxed as Samuel drew Xavier out about his life before coming to Wyoming. "Missouri, you said?" Samuel prompted. Xavier nodded. "Had a small spread near Independence. Nothing like what I've got here, but it was home." "Until your wife passed," Samuel said gently. "Olivia mentioned that. I'm sorry for your loss." "Thank you," Xavier replied, his eyes briefly meeting Olivia's. "It was 2 years ago now." "No family back east?" Samuel asked. Xavier shook his head. "Parents died when I was young. Raised by an uncle who's gone now too. Rebecca, my wife, was all the family I had." The raw pain in Xavier's voice stirred something in Olivia's heart. She understood loss, but not the kind of isolation Xavier had experienced. After dinner, the men moved to the porch to smoke, while Olivia cleared the table. Through the open window, she could hear fragments of their conversation. "Appreciate you looking after Olivia," Samuel was saying. "News like that. Shouldn't have to face it alone." "She's stronger than she looks," came Xavier's reply. "But I was glad to help. Lost my wife to childbirth. Wouldn't wish that on anyone." When Olivia joined them on the porch with coffee, she found the two men engaged in a discussion about cattle breeding. Samuel had his sleeves rolled up, gesturing animatedly as he described a new technique he'd learned in Cheyenne. "Xavier's invited us to dinner next Sunday," Samuel informed her as she handed him a cup. "Seems only fair we take turns." Olivia raised an eyebrow. "Can you cook, Xavier?" A faint blush colored Xavier's cheeks. "Not as well as you, madam, but I can manage a decent stew." As the weeks passed, the Sunday dinner tradition continued, alternating between the two households. Gradually, Xavier became a regular fixture in their lives, often joining Samuel for ranch work when extra hands were needed, or accompanying them to town for supplies. Autumn deepened into winter, bringing with it early snowfalls that blanketed the Wyoming landscape. As Christmas approached, Olivia found herself preparing for the holiday with more enthusiasm than she'd expected, given the sorrow that still occasionally gripped her when she thought of the children she'd never have. "Invited Xavier for Christmas dinner," Samuel announced one evening as they sat by the fire. "Man shouldn't be alone on Christmas." Olivia nodded, warming her hands on her cup of tea. "That was thoughtful of you." Samuel studied her face in the firelight. "You've grown fond of him." It wasn't a question, and Olivia felt a flicker of unease. "He's been a good friend to both of us," she said carefully. "That he has," Samuel agreed. "Makes me wonder how we managed before he came along." There was something in her husband's tone that Olivia couldn't quite decipher. Before she could question him further, he changed the subject, asking about her plans for Christmas dinner. On Christmas Eve, a blizzard descended on the valley, whipping snow into blinding sheets that made travel impossible. Olivia stood at the window, watching the white fury with concern. "Xavier won't be able to make it tomorrow," she said, a note of disappointment in her voice. Samuel looked up from the book he was reading. "Probably not," he agreed, "unless the storm lets up by morning." They retired early, the howling wind their lullaby as they drifted to sleep. Sometime in the darkest hours of the night, Olivia was awakened by a persistent pounding. "Samuel," she said, shaking her husband. "Someone's at the door." Samuel was instantly alert, reaching for his rifle before making his way to the front door. Olivia followed, wrapping a shawl around her nightgown. When Samuel opened the door, a blast of frigid air and snow swept in, along with a snow-covered figure who stumbled across the threshold. "Xavier," Olivia gasped, recognizing him despite the snow caking his clothes and hair. "Horse through me," Xavier managed through chattering teeth. "Mile back, followed your light." Samuel quickly closed the door against the storm. "Get those wet clothes off him," he instructed Olivia, moving to stoke the fire. "I'll fetch blankets." Xavier's hands were too numb to manage the buttons of his coat. Without hesitation, Olivia helped him, her fingers working quickly to remove the frozen garments. By the time Samuel returned with blankets, Xavier was down to his long johns, which were mercifully drier than his outer clothes. "Get those off too," Samuel said matter-of-factly, handing Olivia a blanket to preserve Xavier's modesty. "Man'll catch his death." Once Xavier was wrapped in blankets before the fire, Samuel pressed a glass of whiskey into his hands. "Drink. It'll warm you from the inside." "Thank you," Xavier rasped, taking a sip. "Didn't think I'd make it. Couldn't see more than a foot ahead." "What in God's name possessed you to be out in this?" Samuel demanded. "No one with sense would travel in a blizzard." Xavier's eyes met Olivia's briefly before dropping to his whiskey. "Had your Christmas gift," he admitted. "Wanted to deliver it before the storm got worse. Misjudged how bad it already was." "A gift isn't worth your life," Olivia scolded, though she was touched by the gesture. "Speaking of which," Xavier said, nodding toward his coat hanging by the fire. "Inside pocket." Samuel retrieved a small package wrapped in brown paper and handed it to Olivia. She unwrapped it to find a delicate silver brooch in the shape of a wild rose. "Xavier," she breathed, "it's beautiful." "Reminded me of you," he said simply. "Strong but lovely." Olivia glanced at Samuel, uncertain how to respond to such a personal gift in front of her husband. To her surprise, Samuel was smiling. "It's perfect for her," he agreed. "You've got good taste, Northrop." The storm continued through the night and into Christmas Day, making it impossible for Xavier to return to his ranch. The three of them spent the holiday together, sharing the feast Olivia had prepared and exchanging the few gifts they had for each other. As evening approached, Olivia noticed Samuel watching her and Xavier with an odd expression as they sat playing cards at the kitchen table. "Something on your mind, husband?" she asked when Xavier stepped outside briefly to check on the weather. Samuel set down his coffee cup. "Just thinking about how things work out sometimes." "What do you mean?" "When you told me you couldn't have children," Samuel said slowly, "I worried about the future. Who'd look after the ranch when we're old? Who'd care for you if something happened to me?" Olivia reached for his hand. "We've discussed this. We'll manage." "We will," Samuel agreed, "but I've been thinking. 3 can manage better than 2. Olivia stared at him, not understanding. 3, Samuel's eyes were steady on hers. "Xavier's alone. We're without the family we planned." "Seems to me we could solve both problems by combining our resources." "What exactly are you suggesting?" Olivia asked, her heart beginning to race. That we ask Xavier to partner with us, Samuel said. Officially, join our ranches, work together, share the profits. Before Olivia could respond, the door opened and Xavier returned, bringing a gust of cold air with him. Storm's easing, he reported. Should be able to head home tomorrow. Actually, Samuel said, we'd like to discuss something with you. Xavier looked between them, curiosity in his expression as he took a seat. Samuel laid out his proposal, joining their ranches, sharing the workload, planning for a future together. Xavier listened silently, his face giving away nothing. Why would you offer this? He finally asked. Your spread is doing well. You don't need a partner. Everyone needs family, Samuel said simply. Olivia and I can't have the one we planned. You lost yours. Seems to me we could all benefit from combining forces. Xavier's eyes sought Olivia's. And you, Olivia, what do you think of this? Olivia considered her words carefully. I think Samuel is right. We've come to value your friendship these past months. Working together formally makes sense. Something flashed in Xavier's eyes, hope perhaps, or something deeper. I'd need to think about it, he said. It's a big decision. Of course, Samuel agreed. No rush. But as the winter months passed, Xavier became an increasingly constant presence at the Hayes homestead. The three of them fell into a comfortable routine, working together during the day, sharing meals in the evening, talking late into the night about their plans for the combined ranch. By spring, the partnership was official. Xavier moved his cattle to the Hayes ranch, and they began building an addition to the house to provide him with his own living quarters. One warm evening in May, as Olivia sat on the porch watching Samuel and Xavier repair a wagon, she was struck by how natural their arrangement had become. There was an ease between the three of them that defied conventional relationships. You're staring, Xavier observed, looking up from his work to catch her eye. Olivia smiled. Just appreciating the view, Samuel laughed. Careful, wife. A man might get ideas hearing talk like that. The spring and summer were busy with ranch work. Their combined herds were thriving, and with 3 pairs of hands instead of 2, they were able to take on improvements they'd previously put off. Xavier's quarters were completed by midsummer, a comfortable suite of rooms attached to the main house by a covered walkway. As autumn approached, bringing with it the anniversary of Olivia's devastating diagnosis, she found herself reflecting on how much had changed in a year. The sorrow was still there, it probably always would be, but it was tempered now by the fullness of their unconventional family. One evening, after Samuel had gone to bed early, exhausted from a day of breaking horses, Olivia and Xavier sat on the porch watching the stars emerge. Happy? Xavier asked softly. Olivia considered the question. Yes, she said honestly. Not in the way I expected to be, but yes. Xavier's hand found hers in the darkness, his calloused fingers gentle against her skin. I never thought I'd find a home again after Rebecca died, he admitted. Certainly never imagined it would be like this. Like what? Olivia asked, though she knew what he meant. Sharing a life with a married couple, Xavier said with a small laugh. It's not exactly conventional, no, Olivia agreed, but it works for us. They sat in companionable silence for a while, their hands still touching. I should tell you something, Xavier said eventually, something I've never told anyone here. Olivia turned to look at him, his face half illuminated by the light spilling from the window. What is it? The night we met when you'd just come from the doctor, Xavier began, I was planning to leave Stockton the next day. Leave? Olivia echoed in surprise. Why? Xavier's eyes were fixed on the distant horizon. The ranch wasn't working out as I'd hoped. I was losing money and the memories. They were still too fresh. I thought maybe further West California perhaps would be far enough to outrun them. What made you stay? Olivia asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. Xavier's gaze shifted to her face. "You," he said simply. "That night, seeing your pain, wanting to help. It was the first time since Rebecca died that I felt something other than grief. It gave me a purpose." Olivia was silent, absorbing his words. "I don't expect anything," Xavier added quickly. "I know you love Samuel." "I respect him too much to ever—" "Xavier," Olivia interrupted gently. "I know. Samuel knows too, I think." "Knows what?" Xavier asked, tension in his voice. "That you care for me," Olivia said softly, "and that I care for you." Xavier withdrew his hand, standing abruptly. "I should go in. It's getting late." "Xavier, wait," Olivia called, but he was already striding toward his quarters, leaving her alone with thoughts she wasn't sure she was ready to examine. The next morning, an awkwardness hung between them as they worked alongside Samuel. Olivia caught Xavier avoiding her gaze, keeping a careful distance that hadn't been there before. Samuel noticed too. After supper, when Xavier excused himself early, claiming fatigue, Samuel turned to Olivia with a knowing look. "Did something happen between you two?" he asked directly. Olivia considered lying but couldn't bring herself to do it. "We talked last night. Xavier admitted he has feelings for me." Samuel didn't look surprised. "And how do you feel about him?" The question, asked so calmly, caught Olivia off guard. "Samuel, I love you," she insisted. "You're my husband." "That wasn't what I asked," Samuel said gently. "I know you love me, Livy. I'm asking how you feel about Xavier." Olivia struggled to find the right words. "I care for him deeply," she finally admitted. "But I would never—" "I know you wouldn't," Samuel interrupted, taking her hands in his. "You're too honorable for that. So is he. That's why I trust you both." Olivia searched her husband's face. "What are you saying, Samuel?" Samuel's expression was serious but tender. "I'm saying that I've seen how you look at him and how he looks at you, and I've seen how much better our lives have become with him in them." "Are you suggesting—" Olivia couldn't finish the thought. "I'm suggesting that maybe what we have, this arrangement, this family we've created, maybe it could be more," Samuel said carefully. "For all of us." Olivia stared at him, stunned. "You can't mean that." "I do," Samuel insisted. "Livy, when you told me you couldn't have children, it broke my heart, not for myself but for you. I know how much you wanted to be a mother." "And I've accepted that I won't be," Olivia said. "Have you?" Samuel asked gently. "Because I see the way you look at the children in town, the longing in your eyes, and I wonder if there might be a way for you to have some of what you've lost." "What are you saying?" Olivia whispered, hardly daring to understand. "I'm saying that Xavier is a good man who loves you," Samuel said. "And if you love him too, maybe there's a place for that in our lives." Olivia shook her head in disbelief. "You're suggesting I be with Xavier as well as you?" "Samuel, that's unconventional," Samuel finished for her. "Like everything about our arrangement, but is it wrong if we all consent? If it brings happiness rather than pain?" "The town would never accept it," Olivia protested. "We'd be ostracized." "What happens in our home is our business," Samuel countered. "To the town, Xavier is our partner, our friend who lives in the addition to our house. Nothing more need be known." Olivia was silent, her mind reeling with the implications of what Samuel was suggesting. "Think about it," Samuel said, kissing her forehead. "Talk to Xavier if you want to, but know that whatever you decide, I love you and want your happiness above all else." For days, Olivia avoided being alone with Xavier, needing time to process Samuel's extraordinary suggestion. She watched the two men working together, the easy camaraderie between them, and wondered if what Samuel proposed was even possible. One afternoon, as she was gathering eggs in the henhouse, she heard the door open behind her. Turning, she found Xavier standing in the doorway, his tall frame blocking the light. "We need to talk," he said without preamble. "This distance between us isn't working." Olivia nodded, setting down her basket. Samuel knows, she said. About your feelings for me. Xavier's face paled. I never meant to come between you. If you want me to leave, no, Olivia said quickly. That's not what he wants. It's not what I want either. What do you want, Olivia? Xavier asked, stepping closer. Olivia took a deep breath. Samuel suggested something unusual. He thinks that perhaps our arrangement could be more than it is now. Xavier's brow furrowed in confusion. More how? He thinks, Olivia said carefully, that if there are feelings between us, you and me, perhaps there's a place for that in our lives. Understanding dawned in Xavier's eyes, followed quickly by disbelief. He's suggesting. Olivia nodded, unable to say the words aloud. And what do you think about that? Xavier asked, his voice tight with emotion. I think it's impossible, Olivia said. And yet, Xavier prompted, stepping closer still. Yet I can't deny what I feel for you, Olivia admitted, or that our lives are better with you in them. Xavier reached out tentatively, his fingers brushing her cheek. I've tried not to love you, he said softly. God knows I've tried, but I do, Olivia. I love you in a way I never thought I'd love again after Rebecca. Olivia leaned into his touch, her heart pounding. I love Samuel, she whispered. But I love you too. I don't know how it's possible to love two men at once, but I do. Xavier's arms encircled her, drawing her close. What do we do now? He murmured against her hair. I don't know, Olivia confessed. This is uncharted territory for all of us. That evening, the three of them sat at the kitchen table, an unusual tension in the air as Samuel laid out his thoughts. I love my wife, he said to Xavier. That hasn't changed and won't change. But I see how she lights up when you're near, how you look at her like she's the sunrise after a long night. And I think, why should any of us deny what could bring happiness to all? Xavier looked between them, his expression guarded. And you'd be comfortable with this arrangement? Samuel considered the question seriously. I believe I would. We already share our lives in almost every way. This would simply be an acknowledgement of feelings that already exist. And if people found out, Xavier pressed, it could destroy everything we've built here. Then we'll be discreet, Samuel said pragmatically. What matters is what happens within these walls between the three of us. Xavier turned to Olivia. And you, could you truly be happy with such an arrangement? Olivia reached for both men's hands, forming a circle among them. I think perhaps I could, she said softly. If we're honest with each other, if we navigate this with care and respect. As winter settled over Wyoming once more, the three of them carefully built a new kind of relationship, one without precedent in their experience, but guided by mutual respect and affection. To the outside world, nothing appeared to have changed. Xavier was still the partner who lived in the addition, Samuel and Olivia still the married couple who owned the main house. Within their home, however, a delicate balance was established. There were nights when Olivia stayed with Samuel, nights when she went to Xavier, and nights when she slept alone, giving both men space and herself time to reflect on their unusual arrangement. Are you happy? Samuel asked one snowy evening as they sat before the fire, Xavier having retired early with a book. Olivia considered the question, watching the flames dance. Yes, she said, realizing with some surprise that it was true. Are you? Samuel nodded, his arm tightening around her shoulders. I am. Seeing you happy makes me happy. And Xavier, he's become family in a way I never expected. As spring returned to the valley, their ranch flourished. With 3 dedicated caretakers, their cattle herd grew, and they began to develop a reputation for quality stock. They worked seamlessly together, each contributing unique skills. Samuel's head for business, Xavier's knowledge of breeding, Olivia's organizational abilities. In town, they maintained their public roles carefully. Xavier would ride in separately, or Olivia would go with only one of the men, never giving cause for gossip. If there were rumors, and in a town like Stockton, there were always rumors, they never reached a level that required acknowledgement. One warm June afternoon, a wagon approached their ranch, carrying a familiar figure, Dr. Miller from town. "Doctor," Olivia greeted him, wiping her hands on her apron. "Is someone ill in the area?" "No, Mrs. Hayes," the doctor replied, climbing down from his wagon. "I've come to speak with you, actually. Is your husband at home?" Olivia's heart raced with sudden anxiety. "He's in the barn with Mr. Northrop. I'll fetch them." When the three of them were seated in the parlor, Dr. Miller cleared his throat awkwardly. "I've come about a delicate matter," he began. "There's a situation in town that I thought might interest you." "What kind of situation?" Samuel asked. "A young woman passed through Stockton 2 days ago," Dr. Miller explained. "In the final stages of consumption, I'm afraid. She didn't survive the night, but she left behind an infant daughter just 3 months old." Olivia felt her heart constrict. "The poor child," she murmured. "What will happen to her?" "That's why I'm here," Dr. Miller said. "The town council is trying to find a home for the baby. I remembered your situation, Mrs. Hayes, and thought perhaps you and your husband might consider taking the child." Olivia's eyes filled with tears as she looked at Samuel. His expression was soft, understanding. "Could we see her?" Samuel asked. "The baby, she's at Mrs. Peterson's for now," Dr. Miller said. "You could come to town tomorrow." After the doctor left, the three of them sat in stunned silence for several moments. "A baby," Olivia finally whispered, hope and fear mingling in her voice. Samuel reached for her hand. "What do you think, Livy?" "I think—" Olivia's voice caught. "I think I'd like to meet her." Xavier had remained silent throughout the exchange. Now he stood, moving toward the door. "Where are you going?" Olivia asked. Xavier paused, his expression unreadable. "This is a decision for you and Samuel." "I don't have a place in it." "Of course you do," Samuel said firmly. "You're part of this family now." Xavier shook his head. "Not in the eyes of the law, not in the eyes of the town. If you adopt this child, she'll be a Hayes. I'll just be the business partner who lives nearby." The pain in his voice was palpable. Olivia rose to stand before him, taking his hands in hers. "You would be her father too," she said softly. "In every way that matters." Xavier's eyes searched hers. "And when she asks why Mr. Northrop lives with her parents?" "When the other children at school question the arrangement, we'll find answers," Samuel said, joining them. Together. The next day, the three of them rode into Stockton together, an unprecedented public appearance that drew curious glances from townsfolk. At Mrs. Peterson's house, they were led to a small back room where a cradle stood near the window. Inside lay a tiny infant with wisps of dark hair and rosy cheeks. As Olivia approached, the baby opened her eyes, a startling shade of blue that seemed to look straight into Olivia's soul. "Oh," Olivia breathed, reaching out tentatively to touch the infant's tiny hand. "She's beautiful." The baby's fingers curled reflexively around Olivia's, and something inside her broke open a door she had thought permanently closed. Her mother named her Hope, Mrs. Peterson said from the doorway. "Fitting, don't you think?" Samuel stepped forward to stand beside Olivia, his arm around her waist. "May I?" he asked, and at Mrs. Peterson's nod, he carefully lifted the baby from her cradle. Hope squirmed slightly but didn't cry, her blue eyes fixing on Samuel's face with what almost seemed like curiosity. "Hello there," Samuel murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "Aren't you a pretty little thing?" Xavier hung back, watching from the doorway until Olivia beckoned him forward. With visible hesitation, he approached, looking down at the infant in Samuel's arms. "Would you like to hold her?" Samuel asked, already extending the baby toward Xavier. Xavier took Hope with practiced ease that surprised Olivia. The baby settled against his broad chest, her tiny hand reaching up to pat his bearded cheek. "She likes you," Olivia observed, her heart full at the sight. Xavier's expression softened as he looked down at the infant. "She needs a home," he said simply. The decision was made in that moment, though the paperwork and arrangements took several more days. By the end of the week, Hope Hayes was officially part of their family, her cradle placed in the bedroom Olivia shared with Samuel. The first few weeks were a whirlwind of adjustment. None of them had cared for an infant before, and there were sleepless nights, moments of panic, and countless small discoveries. Xavier proved surprisingly adept with the baby, his large hands gentle as he changed diapers or prepared bottles. "You're a natural," Olivia remarked one evening, watching him rock Hope to sleep. Xavier smiled, a softness in his expression that she'd never seen before. "Had younger siblings," he explained. "Helped raise them after our parents died." As summer turned to fall, they settled into a new routine. Xavier had moved his things into the main house, ostensibly to be closer to help with night feedings. In reality, the pretense of separate living quarters had become increasingly unnecessary within the privacy of their home. Hope thrived under the attention of her three parents, growing plump and active, her dark hair forming tiny curls around her face. Her first smile was for Xavier, her first laugh prompted by Samuel's silly faces, and her first attempt to crawl was toward Olivia. One crisp October morning, as they sat on the porch watching Hope play on a blanket at their feet, Xavier cleared his throat. "Been thinking," he said, "about Hope's future." "What about it?" Samuel asked, sipping his coffee. "She deserves a normal life," Xavier said carefully. "Not whatever this is." He gestured between the three of them. Olivia felt a chill that had nothing to do with the autumn air. "Are you suggesting we change our arrangement?" Xavier's expression was pained. "I'm suggesting we consider what's best for Hope. She needs stability, normalcy." "She has stability," Samuel countered. "Three people who love her unconditionally." "And when she's old enough to understand," Xavier pressed, "when she realizes that her family isn't like other families, then we'll explain," Olivia said firmly. "That families come in different forms. That what matters is love, not convention." Hope chose that moment to grab onto Xavier's pant leg, pulling herself to a standing position for the first time. Her triumphant giggle broke the tension, drawing smiles from all three adults. "See," Samuel said softly, "she knows who her family is." As Hope's first birthday approached, they planned a small celebration. Mrs. Peterson and Dr. Miller were invited, along with the few neighbors who had been friendly since Hope's adoption. It would be the first time they had entertained guests in their home since their arrangement had evolved. The night before the party, after Hope was tucked into her crib, the three adults sat in the parlor discussing final preparations. "We should be careful tomorrow," Xavier said. "About how we interact," Samuel nodded. "Agreed." "To the town, I'm Hope's father, Olivia's her mother, and you're our friend and business partner." "Simple enough," Xavier said, though his expression suggested otherwise. Olivia reached for his hand. "Just for appearances," she reminded him. "It doesn't change what we are to each other." The party was a success. Hope, dressed in a new white dress Olivia had sewn for the occasion, charmed the guests with her bright smile and attempts to walk. If anyone noticed anything unusual about the dynamic between the three adults, they were polite enough not to mention it. As the guests were leaving, Dr. Miller took Olivia aside. "Hope looks wonderful," he said. "You've done an excellent job with her." "Thank you," Olivia replied. "She's been a blessing to us all." The doctor hesitated. "I hope you don't mind my asking, Mrs. Hayes, but I've noticed Mr. Northrop seems quite attached to the child." Olivia's heart skipped a beat. Xavier has been a tremendous help, she said carefully. We're fortunate to have him. Dr. Miller nodded thoughtfully. It's unusual, certainly, but I've observed the three of you together. Hope clearly benefits from having three adults who care for her so deeply. Olivia wasn't sure how to respond to this implicit acknowledgement of their arrangement. What I mean to say, Dr. Miller continued, is that I'm glad Hope found a home with people who love her, regardless of how unconventional that home might be. With that, he bid her goodbye, leaving Olivia to wonder if their secret was perhaps not as well kept as they'd thought. That night, after Hope was asleep, Olivia shared the doctor's comments with Samuel and Xavier. "You think he knows?" Xavier asked, concern etched on his face. "I think he suspects," Olivia replied, "but he seemed accepting." Samuel considered this. "Dr. Miller's a good man, not one for gossip. If he has suspicions, I doubt he'd share them." "But others might not be so understanding," Xavier pointed out. "If word gets out, then we'll face it together," Olivia said firmly, "as we've faced everything else." As Hope grew from infant to toddler, their lives settled into a pattern that, while unconventional, brought contentment to all three adults. Xavier had fully integrated into their family, no longer maintaining even the pretense of separate quarters. To the town, the story remained that he was a business partner who lived in the addition to the house, a fiction maintained by the occasional appearance of smoke from the addition's chimney or laundry hung on its line. Hope, now a lively 2-year-old with dark curls and a mischievous smile, called Samuel Papa, Xavier Daddy, and Olivia Mama. They had explained to her, in terms a child could understand, that she was especially fortunate to have two fathers who loved her. One spring morning, as Olivia was teaching Hope to plant seeds in their garden, a rider appeared on the road to their ranch. As the figure drew closer, Olivia recognized Sheriff Dawson from Stockton. "Morning, Mrs. Hayes," the sheriff called, tipping his hat as he dismounted. "Hope I'm not interrupting." "Not at all, Sheriff," Olivia replied, brushing dirt from her hands. "What brings you out our way?" The sheriff's expression was grave. "Got some news that concerns Mr. Northrop. Is he about?" "He and Samuel are checking the north pasture," Olivia said, a knot forming in her stomach. "They should be back for dinner." "Can I help with something?" Sheriff Dawson shifted uncomfortably. "Received a telegram yesterday. A woman in Missouri is looking for Xavier Northrop. Says she's his sister-in-law." Olivia felt the blood drain from her face. "His sister-in-law, Rebecca Northrop's sister," the sheriff clarified. "Seems she's been looking for him since he left Missouri 2 years ago." "I see," Olivia said, her mind racing. "And what does she want?" "Didn't say specifically," the sheriff replied. "Just that she needs to speak with him on an urgent family matter. Asked if I could confirm his whereabouts." "I'll tell Xavier when he returns," Olivia promised. "Thank you for bringing the message." After the sheriff left, Olivia sat in the garden, her thoughts in turmoil. Xavier had mentioned that Rebecca had no family. Why would a sister-in-law he'd never mentioned suddenly appear after all this time? When Samuel and Xavier returned that evening, Olivia waited until Hope was asleep before sharing the sheriff's news. "A sister-in-law," Xavier repeated, shock evident on his face. "Rebecca was an only child." "That's what I thought you'd said," Olivia replied. "The sheriff mentioned her name was Rebecca Northrop." Xavier's expression darkened. "Rebecca's maiden name was Miller. If she had a sister, she'd be a Miller too, not a Northrop." "Unless she married Rebecca's brother," Samuel suggested. "Rebecca didn't have a brother either," Xavier said firmly. "Someone's lying, and I intend to find out who." The next morning, Xavier rode into Stockton to send a telegram to Missouri. When he returned, his expression was grim. "The woman is Eliza Northrop," he reported. She claims to be married to my brother, James. Your brother. Olivia echoed in confusion. But you said— I said I had no family left, Xavier confirmed. James died when we were teenagers, a mining accident. At least, that's what I was told. You think he might be alive? Samuel asked. Xavier paced the kitchen, agitation evident in every line of his body. I don't know what to think. The telegram asked me to contact her immediately, said she has information about my nephew that I should know. Nephew? Olivia repeated. If James died as a teenager. Exactly, Xavier said. None of this makes sense. I need to go to Missouri, talk to this woman face to face. We'll go with you, Samuel said immediately. Xavier shook his head. Someone needs to stay with the ranch with Hope. I'll go alone. No, Olivia said firmly. We're a family. If this concerns you, it concerns all of us. After much discussion, they agreed that Xavier and Olivia would travel to Missouri, while Samuel remained at the ranch with Hope. It would mean weeks of separation, but all three felt it was necessary to resolve the mystery. The journey east was long and tiring. As the train carried them across the plains and into more settled country, Olivia watched Xavier grow increasingly tense. What are you most afraid of? She asked one evening as they sat in their private compartment. Xavier considered the question. That James is alive, he finally admitted. That he's been alive all these years while I believed him dead. That would mean my uncle lied to me about the most important thing in my life. And if he is alive, Olivia pressed gently, what then? Xavier's eyes met hers, uncertainty in their depths. I don't know. Everything I've built my life with you and Samuel, and hope it's based on being a man with no family ties, no past to consider. Olivia took his hand. Whatever we find in Missouri, it doesn't change who you are to us. Independence, Missouri, was larger than Olivia had imagined. A bustling town filled with merchants, farmers, and the constant traffic of wagon trains heading west. They took a room at a modest hotel and immediately sent word to Xavier Northrop of their arrival. The response came swiftly, an invitation to dinner that very evening at a house on the outskirts of town. As their rented buggy approached the address, Olivia felt Xavier's tension. The house was modest but well-maintained, with a neat garden and freshly painted shutters. A woman opened the door at their knock, petite, dark-haired, with a wary expression that softened as she took in Xavier's face. You look just like him, she said by way of greeting. You must be Xavier. And you're Eliza? Xavier asked stiffly. She nodded, stepping back to allow them entry. Thank you for coming, and this is Olivia Hayes, Olivia supplied, extending her hand. Xavier's friend. Eliza led them to a small parlor where a boy of about 5 sat playing with wooden blocks. He looked up as they entered, Xavier's eyes widening with curiosity. This is Daniel, Eliza said softly. Your nephew. Xavier stared at the child, his face pale. Where is James? He asked, his voice tight. Eliza's expression faltered. James died 2 years ago, consumption. Before he went, he made me promise to find you to tell you the truth. They sat, as Eliza explained. James hadn't died in the mining accident as their uncle had claimed. He'd run away after a brutal beating, unable to endure their uncle's cruelty any longer. He tried to convince Xavier to come with him, but at 16, Xavier had refused to leave their younger siblings. He watched over you from a distance, Eliza said. Saw how you struggled after your siblings died of fever, how your uncle worked you to the bone. He wanted to approach you, but he was afraid you'd reject him for abandoning you, afraid our uncle would find him. So he let me believe he was dead, Xavier said, anger and pain mingling in his voice. For 15 years. Eliza nodded sadly. He regretted it bitterly. When he was dying, he begged me to find you to tell you everything, to ask if you would look out for Daniel." Xavier's gaze returned to the boy, who was now watching the adults with solemn interest. "Daniel has no one else," Eliza continued. "I'm not well." For the first time, Olivia noticed the woman's thin frame, the hectic color in her cheeks. "The doctors say it's the same consumption that took James. I've been trying to find you for 2 years." "Why didn't you telegram earlier?" Xavier asked. "I did," Eliza said. "To Missouri Star Ranch. That's where James said you were working when he last saw you, but you'd already gone west by then. It's taken me this long to trace your path." Xavier was silent for a long moment, processing everything he'd heard. Finally, he looked at Olivia, a question in his eyes. "We should discuss this," Olivia said gently to Eliza. "It's a lot to take in." Eliza nodded in understanding. "Of course. Would you join us for dinner tomorrow? Give yourselves time to consider." That night in their hotel room, Xavier paced like a caged animal. "I don't know what to do," he admitted. "Daniel is my blood, my brother's son, but we already have a life, a complicated one at that. How would we explain everything to a 5-year-old boy, the same way we explain things to Hope?" Olivia said. "In terms he can understand. And the town." Xavier pressed. "It's one thing for a business partner to live with a family. It's another for that partner to suddenly have a nephew living there too." "We could say Daniel is your son," Olivia suggested, "from your marriage to Rebecca, that you only recently learned of his existence." Xavier considered this. "A lie built on a lie. Or the truth," Olivia countered, "that Daniel is your nephew who needs a home. The people of Stockton have accepted stranger arrangements." Xavier sat beside her on the bed, taking her hands in his. "What do you think we should do?" Olivia thought of Hope, of the joy she had brought into their lives. "I think Daniel deserves a family who loves him just as Hope does. I think we can provide that." "And Samuel?" Xavier asked. "We need to consult him too." "We'll send a telegram in the morning," Olivia agreed. "But I think I know what his answer will be." Samuel's response arrived the next afternoon. "Family takes care of family. Bring the boy home." That evening, over dinner at Eliza's house, they shared their decision. Daniel would come to Wyoming with them, to be raised alongside Hope as part of their unconventional family. Eliza's relief was palpable. "James would be so grateful," she said, tears in her eyes. He wanted Daniel to know his uncle, to have the family connection he felt he'd squandered in his own life. As they prepared to depart 2 days later, Eliza's condition worsened. Dr. Perkins, called to attend her, confirmed what they already suspected. She had little time left. "Weeks, perhaps," he told Xavier privately. "Certainly not months." Xavier made a swift decision. "We'll stay," he told Olivia, "until the end. Daniel shouldn't lose his mother without having the chance to say goodbye." They rented a small house near Eliza's, sending word to Samuel of the delay. Each day, Daniel spent time with his mother, then came to stay with Xavier and Olivia, gradually adjusting to the idea that they would be his family when his mother was gone. Olivia watched Xavier with the boy, patient, gentle, teaching him to whittle wood and telling him stories of the ranch in Wyoming. Despite the sad circumstances, she could see the bond forming between uncle and nephew. Eliza passed peacefully in her sleep 3 weeks after their arrival. After the funeral, attended by the few friends she had in town, they began preparations for the journey west. Daniel, solemn but composed, helped pack his few belongings. "Will there be horses where we're going?" he asked Xavier. "More horses than you've ever seen," Xavier promised. "And cattle and chickens, and a little girl named Hope who's very excited to meet you." As their train pulled away from Independence, Olivia watched Daniel's face pressed against the window, his expression a mixture of sadness and anticipation. Xavier sat beside him, one arm protectively around the boy's shoulders. "He'll be all right," Olivia said softly. "We'll make sure of it." The journey home was slower than their eastward trip, as they took care to make it easier on Daniel. By the time they reached Stockton, the boy had begun to smile again, excited by the adventure of traveling west. Samuel and Hope were waiting at the station, little Hope bouncing with excitement at the prospect of meeting her new friend. When she saw Daniel, she marched right up to him. "Are you my brother now?" she asked directly. Daniel looked uncertainly at Xavier, who nodded encouragingly. "I guess so," Daniel replied. Hope beamed. "Good, I always wanted a brother." Samuel embraced Olivia warmly, then extended a hand to Daniel. "Welcome to the family, young man. We're mighty glad to have you." As they rode toward the ranch, Daniel's eyes widened at the vast open spaces, the distant mountains, the herds of cattle grazing on rolling hills. "Is this all yours?" he asked in awe. "Ours," Xavier corrected gently. "All of ours." The ranch house came into view, smoke curling from the chimney. The addition Xavier had once occupied now clearly being prepared for new inhabitants. "Samuel's been busy," Olivia observed. "The addition looks ready for Daniel." "Actually," Samuel said with a smile, "I've been working on something else too. Xavier, why don't you take Daniel to see the surprise behind the barn?" Xavier raised an eyebrow but led the curious boy around the barn. A moment later, Olivia heard Daniel's cry of delight. When she followed, she found the source, a small pony, gentle-eyed and patient, standing in a newly built corral. "Is he mine?" Daniel asked, his eyes wide. Samuel corrected. "And yes, she's yours. Every ranch boy needs his own mount." Xavier's eyes met Samuel's over the boy's head, gratitude evident in his expression. Samuel nodded in acknowledgement, a silent understanding passing between them. That night, after both children were asleep, Hope in her room in the main house, Daniel in his new quarters in the addition, the three adults sat on the porch, watching the stars emerge. "He seems to be adjusting well," Samuel observed. Xavier nodded. "He's resilient, like Hope." "Children often are," Olivia agreed. "More so than adults sometimes." Samuel took her hand. "I've been thinking while you were gone about our arrangement." Olivia tensed, fearing that the addition of Daniel might have changed Samuel's feelings about their unconventional family. "I think it's time we stopped pretending," Samuel continued. "At least within these walls. Xavier, you never use the addition anymore. Your things are all in the main house. It seems silly to maintain the fiction, especially with the children." "What are you suggesting?" Xavier asked cautiously. "That we convert the addition into proper bedrooms for the children," Samuel said. "Connect it fully to the main house. Make it one home, not two separate buildings." "And us," Xavier pressed. "The three of us," Samuel's expression was resolute. "We are what we are, a family." "Unconventional, yes, but a family nonetheless. I see no reason to keep pretending otherwise, at least in private." Olivia looked between the two men who had become the center of her world. "And the town? What happens in our home is our business," Samuel repeated his words from months before. "To the world, I'm still your husband, Xavier is still our partner. But here, among ourselves and our children, we can be honest about who we are to each other." Xavier's relief was visible. "The children will have questions as they get older. And we'll answer them," Olivia said. "Truthfully, in ways they can understand." As spring turned to summer, the Hayes Ranch flourished. The addition was remodeled, creating a wing with bedrooms for both children and a playroom between them. Xavier officially moved his remaining belongings into the main house, taking the bedroom adjacent to the master suite that Samuel and Olivia shared. Daniel adapted to ranch life with enthusiasm, taking to horses as naturally as if he'd been born in the saddle. Hope adored her new brother, following him everywhere and demanding to be included in his adventures. The children bonded quickly, their acceptance of their unusual family structure far simpler than any adults might have been. One evening in late summer, as Olivia sat on the porch watching Xavier teach Daniel to whittle while Hope arranged wildflowers in a jar, Samuel came to sit beside her. "Penny for your thoughts," he said, following her gaze to the domestic scene before them. "I was just thinking about the day, Doctor." "Miller told me I couldn't carry a child," Olivia replied. "How it felt like the end of everything I'd hoped for." Samuel took her hand. "And now," Olivia smiled, watching as Xavier helped Hope arrange her flowers, his large hands gentle as he guided her small ones. "Now I have more than I ever dreamed possible. 2 beautiful children, 2 men who love me, a home filled with joy." "No regrets?" Samuel asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. "None," Olivia said firmly. "I can't carry a child, it's true. But what I've been given instead, this family, this love, it's more than enough." From the yard, Xavier looked up, catching her eye. He smiled, that special smile reserved only for her, and Olivia felt her heart swell with gratitude. For a moment, she remembered that night 3 years ago, standing outside the doctor's office, devastated and alone. How far they had come since then. As if reading her thoughts, Xavier rose and came to sit on her other side, Daniel and Hope following to squeeze onto the porch steps at their feet. "What are we all thinking about so seriously?" Xavier asked, his shoulder pressing comfortably against Olivia's. "The future," Samuel replied, "and the past, how they've brought us here." "I like here," Hope announced, leaning against Olivia's knees. "Me too," Daniel agreed, reaching for Xavier's hand. As the sun set over their land, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Olivia looked at the faces of her family, her unconventional, wonderful family, and felt complete. She couldn't carry a child, but she had been carried by the love of 2 extraordinary men and the joy of 2 remarkable children. It wasn't the life she had planned, but as Xavier's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining while Samuel's arm remained secure around her shoulders, Olivia knew with absolute certainty. It was the life she was meant to have.